You never knew what hat he was going to be wearing.
Tanto quel che viene male si taglia, no? Il cappello copriva gli occhi abbastanza, faceva una grande ombra sugli occhi, era una specie di coppola, però più stravagante, con degli inserti che ora non ricordo bene, ma l'effetto era abbastanza coprente, quindi un po' misterioso, lo rendeva misterioso sicuramente. Quando nel 2008 gli abbiamo proposto di fare una mostra in galleria da noi, lui ci ha invitato nel suo studio di Roma. Io voglio mettere in mostra una collezione, la mia collezione di vestiti, che io ho raccolto in giro per il mondo, che io ho potuto in maniere diverse raccogliere, collezionare attraverso fantastici incontri con fantastiche creature in giro per il mondo, e quindi a me quello che interessa è mettere in mostra questi vestiti. Io per esempio ho incontrato Babar, che mi ha regalato le sue pantofole. Ho incontrato un'intera squadra di rugby di tigri e sono riuscito ad accaparrarmi a fine partita i loro copricoda. Poi ho 2 livree di piccioni che lavorano come concierge all'Hotel Ritz di Parigi. Poi ci raccontò che aveva un preziosissimo costume da bagno di un baby ippopotamo, appena usato in un bagno in un fiume, e che niente meno che un'anaconda del Sud America le aveva regalato il suo vestito da sposa. Lui voleva organizzare una sfilata, lui voleva vedere quegli animali sfilare nel cortile della galleria, nei loro colori sgargianti, sete di tutti i colori, cotoni, lini, nappe dorate, intarsi d'avorio, astracan. In effetti la mostra fu un successo incredibile e devo dire che nel mondo dell'arte milanese sicuramente ancora oggi si parla delle pantofole di Babar, perché sono rimaste un pezzo indimenticabile. E questo a me ha colpito moltissimo perché ho trovato straordinaria questa concretezza della sua immaginazione. Il fatto che questa mostra fosse una dimostrazione del fatto che un mondo di animali che parlano e che sono ben vestiti esiste davvero. Quel mondo di cui ci siamo tutti nutriti, lui per primo, di animali ben vestiti, esiste e lui ce lo voleva fare vedere.
Он пытался, как мне казалось, культивировать в себе ребенка.
A spoiled little boy.
Vladimir made an incredible connection immediately, and the connection that we made was about humor, and more than humor, the absurd.
Vladimir was always good at pointing out absurdities and having a big laugh about everything.
So his books reflect that as well, and that's why they are so delightful.
One of my favorite books by him is The Story of a Boy Named Will, and the story begins on the jacket.
The Story of a Boy Named Will. go on sledding down the hill.
The text begins on the actual jacket, and then you go through it. It's a poem by Daniel Harms.
Willie went for a sled ride and sled swiftly down the hillside. Down the hillside he slid his sled and hits a hunter as he sped.
He was one of the great Russian nonsense writers.
Now the hunter and Will are sitting on the sled, sliding swiftly down the hill. Down the hill they swiftly sped till they ran into a dog.
He's probably part of the last gasp of the Russian avant-garde.
Now the dog and the hunter and the boy named Will are sitting on the sled, sliding swiftly down the hill. Down the hill they swiftly sped till they ran into a fox.
And Vladimir certainly carried on that tradition in the story of a boy named Will.
And now the fox and the dog and the hunter and the boy named Will are sitting on the sled, sliding swiftly down the hill. Down the hill they swiftly sped till they ran into a hare. And now the hare and the fox and the dog and the hunter and the boy named Will are sitting on the sled, sliding swiftly down the hill. Down the hill they swiftly sped till they ran into a bear. And since then I've heard it said, Willie never rides his sled.
And I wish he had done more of Harms' work, because Harms is not that well known in this country.
It might have been the very first meeting with him. I was a lot younger. I still had big glasses. I had longer hair. And I was wearing, apparently, dangly earrings. And we're like in the middle of an art meeting about the book. And he said, you must take off earrings. I cannot work with earrings like that. And I said, okay, he's the talent, so I take off the earrings. He said, you must never wear long earrings with glasses and long hair, only small earrings. And he was right. And from then on, I only wore small earrings with big glasses or no earrings at all.
I met him through his book, The Pup Grew Up.
This is what introduced me to Vladimir. I believe I reviewed it. The Pup Grew Up by Samuel Marshak.
I remember enjoying very much translating this poem into English with all its repetitions and its silliness. It was a great relief from Dostoevsky. A lady came to the station with a pan, a divan, a basin, a box with 3 locks, a valise, and a tiny Pekingese.
So he opens up his portfolio and takes out these images, these paintings, not images, these paintings, beautiful paintings, beautiful spare, constructivist style, modified paintings of a children's book that was originally published in the USSR in the early part of the 20th century.
She insisted at the station on the proper registration of her pan, her divan, her basin, her box with 3 locks, her valise, and her tiny Pekingese.
I'm looking at it for the first time. I think it's stunning. It's breathtaking. And it's so unlike anything that's out there. It's not like anything that's out there.
The train arrived at Gissing with one piece of baggage missing. They counted in frustration: one pan, one divan, one basin, one box with 3 locks, one valise. Hey, boys, where's the Pekingese? The dog began to growl. The lady began to howl. Thieves, robbers, hold the train. This beast is a Great Dane. And she gave a swift kick to the pan and knocked aside the divan, the box with 3 locks, the valise. Where is my Pekingese?
Well, he was certainly influenced by the Russian avant-garde. He was a great fan of Vladimir Lebedev's constructivist or cubist picture books. And of course, the original illustrator of Pup Grew Up was Vladimir Lebedev, one of the great constructivist, cubist Soviet artists. One thing that Lebedev was very concerned about was using the whiteness of the page in the background. He felt that this was important for children to be able to read all the forms. So the whiteness of the page was very important. And also isolating the action. So children could follow the story whether they read or not. They could still follow the events of the story through the illustrations. The illustrations were as important as the text.
Белый лист – это чистое воплощение света. Когда мы зарисуем что-то, но оставляем белое, белое на листе – это другого нет способа изобразить свет, чем оставить белое в графическом листе.
For instance, especially in this book, they have no background. There's no rooms drawn. There are no doorways, windows. It's all white. There's just the characters and the events. He had a very interesting way of working. He doesn't illustrate moments from the text, let's say, that he's working with. He recreates it in images. They don't have the feeling of illustration. They're very alive, they move, they act in the same way that the words act.
I just left medical studies to pursue art, wasn't sure where I would go, and I was in a bookstore in Ann Arbor, and there was The Pup Grew Up lying on a table. And I picked it up, and immediately I felt like the answer was in my hands. This is what I wanted to do. This is the kind of artist I wanted to follow. So from that very first meeting of me with The Pup Grew Up, I felt a very strong connection to this artist, Vladimir Radunsky.
Он жил на 6-й и 15-й, там, ну, угловой дом такой был красивый. У него было выражение лица, как будто он каждую секунду ожидает чего-то удивительно приятного, веселого и хорошего, что должно произойти, и он к этому готов. Но это не происходит, может быть, но он все время выражает готовность полную, потому что сейчас, через секунду произойдет что-то потрясающе веселое и клевое, то он к этому уже подготовлен.
So his next book was called Hail to Mail, again, Samuel Marshak. That was really a tour de force. It's a circular story about a letter that is going one place and then has to go all the way around the world to get to where it's supposed to have been in the first place. It's sort of chasing itself around the world. It gave Vladimir an opportunity to create these intricate envelopes and stamps and stamps on the stamps. He got to do scenes all over the world. He got to play with the very funnily translated text that Richard created.
There's a little balloon, a huge ship, and a little girl with a bunch of balloons, and one balloon broke away and is floating up. And I discovered what I think are two self-portraits of Vova himself. Well, at the beginning, when the mailman comes with a letter, he says, "A certified letter for John Peck, postmarked from Schenectady." A certified letter for John Peck, but he left yesterday. And on the wall is a portrait with a red hat. It's a Renaissance imitation portrait. Looks to me like Vova, and he's looking to the left. The same portrait occurs again, only here the portrait is looking the other way. But it's the same portrait of what I think of as Vova. So he's looking, he turns around and he looks as the letter comes back to Peck. I admired this because there's such a apparent spontaneity in what Radunsky does in his illustration, in his creations.
Beautifully drawn book, just beautiful stuff.
He said, we need a big stamp on it, a return to sender stamp, and with a big hand like that. And so he created this stamp, and it was the, divine surprise underneath the jacket. Just look at this. I mean, this is just for you.
I found a quotation from him. "I don't draw pictures, I create books."
So Vladimir was really interested in the whole book, the whole package. So that's the interior, the exterior, the typography, the leading between the lines, the kerning, that's the space between the letters.
So his books were just exquisitely designed. And that's the thing that stood out. And I love that. I love that work so much. And he did 2 or 3 books like that. And then when I saw him in Rome years and years later, I asked him, what about those books? He says, oh, they were shit. Like, that was how he said, that was shit. That was shit work. And wow, really?
He thought being spontaneous is like something you have to obtain. You have to work a lot to be spontaneous.
Он стремился к какой-то раскованности, свободе абсолютной и некой такой, банально это звучит, такой детскости такой.
He certainly had a great appreciation for children's drawings.
Он очень многому учился впоследствии своих детей, давая им там что-то рисовать, потом смотрел, как это происходит.
He loved how they would represent something with very simple forms or just a scribble.
Вот эти каляки были его какой-то глобальной целью.
He tried his best at the end of his work to be spontaneous.
He would work very hard to communicate that kind of purity.
Вот этот элемент свободы, вот этого письма какого-то его, этой линии, она была для него абсолютно принципиальной. Он тратил огромные усилия, как Пикассо, на то, чтобы быть свободным.
He put a lot of effort in that, finding this real, gesture in his sign.
Spontaneity is a complex idea because to do it right, it has to be perfect.
Он стремился к калякам, но калякам, непростым калякам.
He didn't just develop a style that he repeated from book after book after book after book. He was constantly exploring visual vocabulary. Each book was a new adventure for him as well as for the children.
There was a foundational book at the publisher called Brown Bear, What Do You See? Very famous book in the States. illustrated by Eric Carle. And Bill Martin Jr. had written another book. It was called The Maestro Plays. I don't know if Bill wanted it to go to Vladimir or if we wanted it to go to Vladimir at the publisher. Anyway, we gave this text to Vladimir. It's called The Maestro Plays, and it is cacophony of sounds that an orchestra makes under the baton of a maestro. Vladimir totally went to town on this in terms of color. He made the maestro sort of clownish, but very sympathetic.
Цвет — это какая-то совсем другая стихия. Цвет понимается Володей очень по-детски. Это не цвет, который совпадает с предметом. Это большие цветные поля, которые он широко использует, и это такой цвет без объекта. Создают чистую игру цветовых контрастов, которая обращена только к эмоции, но никогда не создает форму. Вот я ссылался на Беньямина, который говорил, что только ребенок ощущает непосредственно, потому что он мыслит не объектами, а чистым цветом.
Every kind of color mechanism that we could use for the printing, we used, and the text is extremely playful, poetic, bouncy. We pulled out all the stops for that book, and it's still in print, and it's still a great book. And Vladimir always used to say, I desperately must win Caldecott, because that's the big art medal in the States. And we thought, this could do it, this could do it. It didn't.
I never understood why he didn't get better recognition in this country.
He was perplexed. I mean, we were all perplexed. He should have. He was just too much too soon.
Yakadrakadroni is a very silly book, and I think it's based on a Russian a sort of ditty, I think is what it is. I'm not quite sure, but it's just basically a lot of lists of crazy names of characters. Well, this might be one of my favorite pages because it's the copyright page, and he was insistent that all the characters' names and incidents in this book are entirely fictitious, and he wanted this to be huge on the opening spread. Here it goes. 3 brothers, Yuck and Yuckadruck and Yakadruckadroni, lived peacefully among themselves, one fat, one tall, one scrawny. Just in time to make them happy came along 3 little sisters, lovely Zippa, Zippa-Drippa, Zippa-Drippa Limpomponi. And so they marry Yuck to Zippa, Yuckadruck to Zippa-Drippa, and Yakadruckadroni? Oh yes, that's right, here comes the bride. It's Zippa, yes, it's Drippa, right. It's Zippa-Drippa Limpomponi. And you know, they have some children. Yuck and Zippa, little Shuck. Yuckadruck and Zippa-Drippa, Shuck Shuckmut. And Yakadruckadroni and Zippa-Drippa Limpomponi? They waste no time, the baby's fine. It's Shuck Shuckmut Shuckmoni. And so they live, they have a home. The house is big and crazy. And there's a wordless spread of the house, which does look big and crazy. 1 cat, 1 dog, 1 pig, 1 frog, and all of them named Daisy. And that's the end of the book. So it's a very silly book. It's a very fun read aloud. And every bit of this was conceived and illustrated by Vladimir.
He walked me home up through Riverside Park, and he said, okay, we must work together. We must work together. And of course, I was thrilled that he was saying these things. And we were walking in the park late at night. I'm sure my wife was worried about me. And suddenly he looked down into the grass, and he said, aha, here's our contract. And he reached into the grass, and he pulled up 2 baseballs. He said, this is our contract. We must each sign a baseball, which will indicate that we will do a book together. This is that baseball. My signature, our signatures is still kind of there, but gone. And that was the beginning of our working relationship. And we then worked together for 20 years, yeah. Our first book was called Table Manners. Vladimir was insisting that whatever we did had to be a series of 6 books based on 2 characters, himself, Dudunya, and me, and my character's name was Chester. We had been spinning tales of Chester and Dudunya going on almost like Don Quixote-esque adventures, and suddenly, at our cafe, holding our cups of coffee, Vladimir said, what about table manners? That could be an idea. Dudunya, if I may say so, you look like a pig. Chester, dear, please excuse me. Eating without a plate, leopard style, filthy. Drinking without a glass, zebra style, ugly. Dining without a napkin, wild boar style, filthy ugly. Please do not confuse horrible wild boar with a pig. A wild boar is far more disgusting than a pig. But Chester, why a fork and a knife? Because it makes you look grown up, really nice looking grown up Dudunya here, and because a knife makes big things small enough to fit into your mouth. Big potato, 16-bite potato eating method. 16 bites, very carefully. You need to cut the potato that way. The genius of Vladimir is he allows the reader, and in our case, the reader is generally a child, to be in on the joke. And so a child knows you don't pour jam on the cat, but it's fun to be in on the joke. And so this is something that Vladimir was very, very, very good at. Brother, does your sister embarrass you when you have friends over for lunch? Show her this book.
It's very interesting when you see little kids reading one of his books for the first time and they get the joke and they laugh.
Vladimir was a dandy.
He dressed the part.
He always had the most beautiful white shirts.
He wore beautiful white linen a lot.
But there would be something about them, like there would be some red stitching around one of the buttonholes, or there would be a particular texture to the shirt that was just perfect.
He dressed like somebody impersonating an artist.
He used to wear a beret a lot.
Rome is hot. He still wore that and a you know, like a beret.
And he always had sort of a beret or some hat, and he had those big glasses.
He had beautiful straw Panama or fedora.
Many hats, many very interesting hats.
I think all that mattered to Vladimir was that the hats looked slightly peculiar on him.
Vladimir was his own art object. Did a beautiful photograph of himself without clothes on, and he colored his head and body red, and he's wearing a little telephone on top of his head. So he was very aware of his own sculptural self, I think, and used it beautifully. And Yes, he was his own art object, and so was his entire family. All beautiful people.
Yeah, I can't even pronounce the name of it. It's like tz or something like that.
Setsa.
Setsa, right?
Цеца.
А Цеца была названа так, потому что у них была няня грузинская там в Нью-Йорке, много лет у девочек, и от нее всякие выражения. И нам Цеца – это крошки. Она была маленькая, и назвали нам Цеца, а сокращенно Цеца.
In order to do children's books the way that he does it, and I think the way I do it too, and Myra and those people, you have to have that kind of humor. You have to be able to see the humor in a dachshund. You have to actually understand what a dachshund is.
Почему он все-таки выбрал не просто Италию, а Рим?
He said this when he still had, as it turned out, 10 or 15 years left. He said, I only have so many times that I can walk past the Pantheon. I will always walk past the Pantheon.
If I remember correctly, he said, yeah, I just want to live somewhere where I love to be, you know, and that was Rome.
Рим – это идеальное место вот этого анамнезиса, воспоминания о чем-то, чего ты не можешь схватить. Ты ходишь по этому городу, и ты находишься всегда в каком-то мираже, которым ты соотносишь себя с какими-то ренессансным Римом или там античным Римом, имперским Римом. И каждый раз это не складывается в какую-то картину, но ты все время движешься в эту сторону.
Rome emanated this warm, you know, sun-drenched, honey-colored, light cultural vibe that he liked.
Пьяцца дella Магдалена дей Монти, по-моему. Местечко вот прямо на этой площади с фонтаном, с мраморным. И я жду Вову, я понятия не имел, как он выглядит, и вдруг появляется такой вот совершенно обаятельный человек в соломенной шляпе.
А вы уже начали писать?
Вова, надо сказать, наотрез отказался вообще сниматься.
Вот сейчас нажал, да.
Он на самом деле был такой очень закадровый человек. И я попросил Вову принести с собой эту книжку и подумал, что, может быть, он мне покажет эту книгу и как-то на пальцах что расскажет про иллюстрации, и про технику свою, о том, как вместе они вырабатывали этот замысел с Иосифом. Мне очень, знаете, что напоминает? Вот сейчас я посмотрел Лебедева, мистер Твистер. У него такие же есть...
Напрасно вам это напоминает. Я не вижу никакого сходства.
И в этом кафе там были открытые окна, это лето было, и как-то так вот мы сели в углу, и там было хорошее очень освещение.
Иосиф оказался у меня в студии. Все это было уже на Бруклин-Хайтс. И я как раз был занят рисованием книжки Чуковского «Телефон». Иосиф удивился, почему я делаю Чуковского. Он как-то так очень темпераментно на это отреагировал, сказал: «Зачем вы это делаете?» Мне нравится Чуковский, «Телефон», но он как-то довольно так резко на это отреагировал, сказал, что доктор Айболит – это плагиат. Да, я стал возражать и говорить, что доктор Дулиттл довольно вещь тусклая, такая скучная, а у Чуковского получилась замечательная вещь. Он вдруг мне сказал: «Я для вас лучше книжку напишу». Ну, что ты можешь сказать, когда Иосиф Брод тебе говорит: «Я для вас книжку напишу»,
Я не поверил, что будет написана вообще какая-то книжка, но прошло, ну, по-моему, несколько дней всего лишь, и Иосиф позвонил и сказал, что у него есть текст. И я помню, что когда я открыл текст, первые строчки, которые я обнаружил, собственно, это на меня и произвело очень сильное впечатление. America first was discovered by fish. Эта книжка похожа на игру по устройству. Идея такая, что сначала был какой-то вот кусок земли, без названия, без всякого. В него ткнулись носом рыбы. Вот они открыли эту землю. Потом появились пилигримы. Значит, идет по нарастающей. Вот есть земля, пилигримы, потом пилигримы построили вот там что-то, начали как-то обустраиваться, и уже есть земля, пилигримы, это, а потом еще что-то появилось. И вот все время идет перечисление, что добавляется, Америка растет, собственно. Вот. В этом есть сходство с какой-то игрой детской.
Мне запомнился момент, когда я вас спросил, ну, говорю, какой был коммерческий успех? Был ли коммерческий успех у вашей книги?
Я доволен, чрезвычайно. Мне кажется, что не исключено, что это из всех моих книжек вообще лучшая.
Засмеялся, сказал, да, это была очень успешная книга.
В том смысле, что она не продалась вообще практически.
I remember once he said to me, you know, people tell me I'm difficult to work with. Moi?
He was always difficult. He was difficult to work with.
He was difficult to work with.
Yes.
It's many different things.
I was his fifth agent, I think.
Vladimir was very much a believer in that he is the creative artist, the designer, the thinker, the plotter. The publisher is the producer, the seller, the promoter.
He had, his own ideas.
In modern publishing, everything meshes, and more so, artists are asked to be all of those things as well.
He knew exactly what he wanted.
Especially in the American, for lack of a better word, democratic tradition of people sitting around a conference room table looking at work that an artist has brought in, and everyone from top to bottom, from brand new intern to vice president, feels perfectly empowered to say, why is this here on the page? Or why is it that color? Which would enrage Vladimir.
Yeah, he could get angry, yeah.
It enrages every artist, but we're kind of trained not to say much. Vladimir was not trained not to say much.
As funny as he was, he said some of the nastiest things I've ever heard said about other people.
He did not bend much, or at all.
And sometimes he was so impossible. He was so impossible to work with that he pushed you away,
Very temperamental artist person.
Я думаю, что это было счастье какое-то ему дарованное в такой тяжелый период, когда он болел, и все было паршиво, и все было, конечно, грустно. И это какой-то был момент очень светлый.
It was Vladimir, it was just an explosion of, already the music was boom, 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 very upbeat, and just an explosion of colors and of patterns mixing together that just worked in an amazing world. You were like, woo! A lot of yellow, a lot of stripes, a lot of pois. then that beautiful canopy coming down with the light, with that gauze coming down. That was beautiful.
Abbiamo allestito per lui un laboratorio speciale, un piccolo spazio sotto tetto del Teatro Nazionale qui a Roma, con tutti i suoi tavoli, tutto ordinato, perché lui era molto ordinato, con tutte le sue ciotole di ceramica bianca e tutte le sue tavolozze di colore. E lui la mattina arrivava col suo camice e cominciava a dipingere direttamente i costumi con le sue mani. E a volte io lo osservavo da dietro senza fargli capire che ero là. Ed era estremamente poetico, perché lui dipingeva queste volute meravigliose sui tessuti. Era proprio astratto dalla realtà in quel momento, con tutte le sue ciotole. È stato veramente bello.
Когда он делает спектакль, даже не знаю, как это сказать, но он всегда думал о том, что есть художники, которые работают в каком-то огромном масштабе, которые малюют там кистью огромные, на огромных полотнах, там, 10 на 10 метров, а он все время сидит и перышком там что-то такое делает на маленькой бумажке. Это, он любил это, и не то, что он мечтал всегда быть каким-то монументалистом, но когда он стал делать этот спектакль и почувствовал, что такое работать в большом масштабе, он был абсолютно счастлив и говорил много раз мне, что вот, черт подери, как это приятно, и как мне жалко, что я раньше не добрался до такого масштаба.
Allora, io credo che Vladimir alla fine fosse contento del risultato, o perlomeno, come dire, affascinato dal fatto che questa cosa, questa sua poetica sulla carta diventasse qualcosa di tridimensionale indossato dai ballerini, comunque era abbastanza impressionante. Forse qualcosina abbiamo dovuto mediare, su qualcosina ha dovuto rinunciare, ma in generale io credo che fosse molto contento. Almeno questo io mi ricordo nel momento delle prove, fino alla prima, io l'ho visto sempre contento, insomma, contento. E noi con lui.
Он с большим удовольствием и кайфом сделал этот спектакль. Он волновался, переживал, конечно, что первый раз делал такую вещь, но очень как-то он это все выдержал и довел все до конца. Мне кажется, он был счастлив.
Un giorno io non capivo bene come voleva agganciare un costume. E lui mi spiegava, ma io non lo capivo. A un certo punto eravamo vicino all'ascensore con un muro bianco davanti e lui aveva la sua matita in tasca. Ha preso la matita e mi ha disegnato sul muro il bottone come lo voleva, con i 4 buchini, sia in pianta che in sezione. Ha detto, così lo voglio. Allora ho capito. E quel disegno è ancora sul muro e non lo tocchiamo. Io all'inizio ho detto, no, Vladimir, non disegniamo sul muro del teatro. Però poi è rimasto, come dire, un bel ricordo che vediamo tutte le mattine quando arriviamo in sartoria.
Ludwig Bemelmans was was an artist.
Austrian-American illustrator.
Ludwig Bemelmans was sort of a famous children's book artist who did Madeline.
Here is Madeline.
Certainly one of my favorites when I was growing up.
At the time, his art was described as quite primitive.
Naive drawing style with beautiful color and beautiful composition.
Vladimir and I both loved very much.
Bemelmans was also a muralist, and he painted the walls of the Café Carlyle here in Manhattan.
But in a way, Vladimir was like a Bemelmans because he was sort of a raconteur. creature, a man of the art world.
And I suspect that this had enormous impact on Vladimir's work as well.
Here's Vladimir's story called If I Met Bemelmans by Vladimir Radunsky. If suddenly I ran into Ludwig Bemelmans on the street, I wouldn't be surprised.
I would just say to him, "Hello, Mr. Bemelmans. My name is Vladimir Radunsky. I miss you so much."
And he would probably be surprised and say, "Forgive me, but your name does not say anything to me."
Then I would explain to him that, well, I'm sure that he would understand perfectly.
And then I would say to him,
"Could I invite you for a glass of wine?"
And then he would say, "What an excellent idea. I would gladly have a glass."
I would gladly have a glass.
I would gladly have a glass.
To you, Mr. Bemelmans, and to your wonderful books, I admire them so much.
Then we would sit and chat about this and that. And when the right moment came, I would say,
I also write and draw children's books. And he would say, "Is that so?"
Oh, is that so?
but not as if he were surprised or glad, just, "Is that so?"
Is that so?
Is that so?
But I would not be discouraged. I would just take out of my pocket one of my better drawings, the one I always keep there in case I suddenly run into Bemelmans. This one, for example, the one with the dogs. I like to draw dogs. It's a weakness of mine.
I would show him how I draw people, too.
"Ah, yes, you know, Mr. Radunsky, I used to draw dogs and other animals, and people too. I drew everything I saw."
I drew everything I saw.
I drew everything I saw.
And then he would show me this.
And then I would say, "You are a genius."
You are a genius.
You are a genius. What a pity you do not draw books anymore.
Then we would drink another glass of wine, and I would ask, "Is that true?"
Is that true that there, where you are now, you are surrounded by people and animals from your books?
And he would answer, "Yes, it's exactly right."
Yes, that is exactly right.
Yes, that is exactly right.
Oh, I get it now. So if I draw as many nice dogs, cats, people, trees, houses, etc.
as you did,
then I will also end up among them.
And that will be such a lot of fun, right?
And that will be such a lot of fun, right?
And that will be such a lot of fun, right?
I am sorry, Mr. Radunsky, but I have to go.
I'm sorry, Mr. Radunsky, but I have to go.
Good luck to you.
And I would stay a bit, thinking about this and that, then would pay for our wine.
And go home to draw.
That guy, it's nuts.
He sat here for a whole hour talking to himself, calling someone Bemelmans, proposing toast.
Radunsky 2015.
The end.
I didn't know anything about him being sick, and I don't think anybody really did.
Our last book together, Mother Goose of Pudding Lane, in that book, Vladimir, artistic style, I think, is beautifully, comes to its, maybe one of its high points. He's a great painter, as you can see, as he painted the figures. Every movement of his brush and of his hand is visible in the art itself. So he created these figures in almost a classical painting style. And at the last minute, he decided to add scribbles. He had these wonderful scribbled style drawings, which are very difficult to do as beautifully as Vladimir does. And he then placed those over top So he told me at the last minute, I added those, I just required them. And we were still working up until 3 days before he passed away.
Я не знаю, пришел ли он к ним в конце концов, к тем самым коллегам, о которых он мечтал, или нет. Это осталось невыясненным. Вот, но, безусловно, каким-то он пришел.
There's no one else. They broke the mold when he was created, so I'm lucky to have known him, really.
I think it was Vladimir's idea to have evenings of friends making things that they wouldn't ordinarily make. And in one instance, we made sculptures. So we each made sculptures. I remember Peter Sees made a fish with a head sticking out of it. And Vladimir made this head. And then I don't remember what I made. And then we shared at the end our pieces. And so by luck, I managed to get Vladimir's head here, which also by luck has never fallen to the floor and broken.